And Lord, as we continue this series in looking at what does it mean to love you, I pray that today, that maybe for many of us and our efforts to love you, that Father, we have misplaced what our efforts should be and where they should be. And maybe today might be a day of freedom. And we began to look at what does it really mean to love you with all of our strength. And so, Father, I just pray that you will use today as an opportunity to, again, make yourself known to us. And all these things we ask in your name. Amen. Okay, I remember when I first learned how to boogie board. So we were at the beach, and I was with my friend Frank and some other people. And so Frank was teaching myself and another guy how to boogie board. And, and so he said, when you see the wave, start swimming. And then once you feel the wave start to push you, push down on your board, and that will help you to catch the wave. So I get out in the ocean, I'm doing my thing, I see a wave come, so I start swimming as hard as I can. The wave grabs the board, pushes the board, I push the board down, and then within seconds, I am slammed into the ground by the wave, flipped over, hurt my back kind of thing, totally wiped out, completely wiped out. So then I get back to the beach, and Frank's laughing at me, my friends are laughing at me. But then, unbeknownst to me, the other guy that Frank was teaching how to boogie board crashed and did the same thing as well. And so I was talking to Frank about it, and I was thinking, I did what you told me to do. Like, I went out, I pushed down on the board, I did exactly how you told me to do. He said, well, did you pull up on the board? I said, well, you didn't tell me to pull up on the board. He said, well, yes, I did. I said, no, you didn't. He said, yes, I did. And the other guy goes, no, you didn't. Because both of us completely wiped out on that day. And it's amazing when you look at like the power of the ocean and being able to go out and do that. And keep this boogie board idea in mind, because we're going to come back to the boogie board a little bit later. But right now we're doing a series called What is Love? I'm going to resist because what is love? Okay, I guess I get it. But the whole thing, what is love? And in this series, what we're looking at is exactly that. Because again, we're told by Jesus in the Great Commandment, right, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. But again, the question is, we need to figure out what love is, because our tendency when it comes to loving others is we tend to love them the way that we desire to be loved. And I think we do that sometimes in our same way in our relationship with God as well, unbeknownst to us. So I think it's good for us to take a moment to examine that. And so that's what we've been looking at over the course of this series. If you've missed any of the series, I want to encourage you to go back and kind of walk through the series. You can go to our website, click Service on Demand, and click the thumbnail that looks exactly like that. And then you'll be able to go back and you can watch the sermons on our website as well. But with that, what we've been doing is we've been I started last week, I've been kind of keeping a little bit of a running tally on what we're talking about when it comes to loving God. And so based upon what we've learned over the last few weeks, here's what it means to love God. You can see this right on the screen. Loving God is a living, growing, and dynamic journey, enriched and empowered by Him, as we make our home in Him and look to Him as our sole source for meeting our deepest needs for identity, value, and purpose. Expanded by utilizing our critical thinking and reasoning, adjusting the way that we process life, using our imagination to dream with God, and moving God to the front of our plans rather than an afterthought. So those are the kind of things we've talked about over the course of this series so far. So again, we've covered this aspect of loving God with your heart, your soul, your mind. And so today we're looking at, oh, thank you. Somebody watches Sesame Street. All right, so with that in mind, Mark 12:30, it says, and you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. Now, I think it's important for us to understand what strength means, because I think this could be the area that I think has impacted us the most when it comes to following Jesus, because of the way that we interpret what strength means, or maybe the way the strength has been interpreted to us as far as what it means as well. So I think it's important for us to really dive into this. And so with that in mind, here's what I want you to understand. That loving God with all of your strength is about this. Loving God is about positioning, not effort. You said it again. Loving God is about positioning, not effort. And so we're going to spend the rest of our time together looking at that and looking at ultimately what does that mean? So last week we looked at loving God with all of your mind, right? And we talked about how important it is for us to be able to do that. And there's one component that I didn't talk about last week because I was saving it for this week to move into what we're going to be talking about this week. And that's Romans chapter 12, verse 2. It says, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God what? So let God what? So who's doing the transforming? God, right? So keep that in mind. So let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. But who's doing the changing? God, because God is doing the transforming. Great. So then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. So it's important for us to realize, like, who is doing the transforming? That's really key. Because I think sometimes what has happened is the way that loving God has been presented to us is almost like we muster the effort to follow God. And we have to stop doing this and stop doing that and stop doing this and stop doing that. And it's all based upon our effort in being able to follow God and who he is. And I want to expand that and maybe even move us into a different direction. Because I think if we understand what it is that I'm going to be talking about today, then what will happen is by changing this dynamic of our life, it changes the way that we connect with God. And ultimately, it will even begin to change our patterns in life and the way that we live. Because I think what has happened is we try to love God with all of our effort, and then what happens? We what? Fail, right? We fail. And then when we fail, we feel what? Guilty. I'm asking a lot of what's today, aren't I? Look, kid, you wrote the sermon. You tell me. But yeah, so we feel guilty. We feel shame. And so then we start to feel like I'm not good enough. And see, that's the thing about effort. And remember, for this entire series, one of the things that I've hit, and I've hit a lot of times, is that following God is not about being good. It's not about that. Because the reality is, if you try to be good, you can never be good enough. And ultimately, the reality is, no matter how good you are, being good, you can be good. Matter of fact, you can be perfect at being good and still never connect with God. So that's why it's so important for us to make sure that we're not pursuing God based upon our effort and our ability. So what we did for this series is we've talked about this concept of making God our home, making him our home. And would you guys agree that there's a difference between the home that we reside in and our vacation home? Do you guys agree that there's a difference? And so I think for many of us, what we've done is we've turned God kind of into our vacation home. And so with that, our vacation home is cool. It's a great spot to go. It's nice to visit, has really great sights, really great experiences. But like we said before, home is where your heart is, and home is where you hang your hat. And so the reality is, if we are building our identity, our meaning, our purpose off of something other than God, then that place is our home, and God just happens to be a vacation home that we visit every once in a while. So if your meaning, purpose, and value is being met in your job, then your job is your home, and God's kind of a vacation home that we visit every once in a while. And we can go through the list, like family, relationships, career, success, money, like all of those things. If our identity, our value, and our meaning and our purpose is being founded in those are our home. And so over the course of this series, what I've been encouraging us to do is literally, because the day that you made a commitment to Jesus, you actually moved residences. And so that residence is his home. We're moving into his home. But the idea also is we also have to make him our home as well, and really begin to pursue connecting with him. So that's one metaphor that we've used throughout this series. And there's another one that I want to hit this morning as well, and that is in John chapter 15, verses 4 and 5, it says, "Remain in me, and I will remain in you. For a branch cannot produce fruit if it is severed from the vine, and you cannot be fruitful unless you remain in me. Yes, I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing." So the metaphor that Jesus gives us there is that of the vine and that of the branch. And so the idea is the branch has life as long as the branch is connected to the vine. And the vine is the source of its of its nutrients, a source of water. Also, what the vine will do is if there is a need for more sun, then what the vine will do is also maybe anchor or move the branch so that the branch is in a position to even get more sun. And so as we look at this, as I've talked about before, if loving God is about positioning and not effort, then it makes sense that Jesus would say, remain in me. Because that's the whole point about positioning, is being in him. And we're going to talk about the depth of that in a minute. But the reality is when you look at a vine, or when you look at a branch, when you look at a tree, how much effort do you see? How much effort do you see from a? I mean, do you see like we have an orange tree in our background in our backyard, and as I was going over my sermon this morning, I was looking at the orange tree, and you know what I didn't see? I didn't see like. I know, right? Yeah, I don't want to let anything out by accident. But yeah, thank you. Yeah, but you didn't see effort from the tree. It just naturally produced leaves and it naturally produced fruit. As long as but if I cut the vine off, if I cut the branch off from the vine, then what happens to the branch? It dies. And everything connected to it dies. So it only has life as long as it is connected. And so it's important for us to begin to realize that really is a source for us too. That is not about effort, it's about positioning. And that positioning is about connection and being ultimately connected in our relationship with him as well. And so I want to go back to this idea, loving God with all of your strength. Because the Greek word for there is for strength there is ischus, and it literally means it does mean strength, it does mean power, it does mean ability. So when you look at that, it automatically assumes, well, then that means I must love God with all my effort, with all my power, with all of my ability. When you look at the surface level, it seems like it would mean that. But then I started doing some digging into this Greek word, and it has a very interesting implication to it. Because what it literally means, because there's a different Greek word for power, ability in and of itself, and that's dunamis. But this is a different Greek word here. And literally what it means is this, and I love this, is that it is a power, it is a strength, it is an ability that is not derived from ourselves. So then who would be the source? God. The same way that we don't fix our minds, God fixes our minds. The same way that we don't transform our lives, God transforms our lives. The same way when it comes to these aspects of our relationship with him, if we really want to love God with all of our strength, and that's what we talked about over the course of this whole series, right? Is week one, when we talked about love, we said that when it comes to loving, the grace of God is really powerful because not only does God call us to love him, he also empowers us to love him, and he also walks with us to help us to be able to love him. So it's not that I'm coming up with my own strength and my ability to love him. No, God is walking with me through it. And then this also applies to every aspect. Loving God with all my heart. He walks with me through it. Loving God with all my soul. And understanding meaning, purpose, and value. He walks with me through that. Loving God with all my mind. He walks with me through that. Loving God with all my strength. He walks. So loving God with all of our strength, that's why it's not about effort. Because, isn't it true? Can't I try to sum up and live up all the effort in the world? Can't I do that? But yet do that without God? Can't I? And the reality is for many of us, when we look over our Christian lives, and maybe because of some of the things that we've been taught, for many of us, that really sums up the way that we try to live our lives. I've tried to live by effort. I've tried to live by being good. I've tried to live by being nice. I've tried. But the problem with effort is it doesn't work. But positioning is different. Because positioning can't happen without connection. And ultimately, again, this is what God is encouraging us to do in our relationship with him. Matter of fact, there are even some adages about effort, right? How many of us know this adage? Hard work pays off. Exactly. Hard work pays off, which is true, except in our relationship with God. Because we can work really hard and never be connected. We go really hard, never be connected. So I want to give us a picture of sometimes what it looks like when we work really hard. And I want to go back to the boogie board. Okay? I want to go back to the boogie board. So now here's the deal. Hopefully you guys in the back will be able to see me. Actually, you know what? I'm going to try this. And if I fall, make sure you record this because this could be on America's Funniest Videos. But I am going to use the piano bench here. Yeah, you can see where this potentially can go. But we're going to have it. We're either going to ride this together or die together. Well, you'll die laughing. All right. But now here's the deal. Is I can get on the boogie board, right? Right now. And I can swim. Oh, good, I'm alive. Okay. I can swim as hard as I can. But here's the question I want to ask. Where am I going? Where am I going? Nowhere. Now, what if I did this? What if I swam harder? Where am I going? Where am I going? How about this? Let's do a different stroke. Where am I going? Hospital. I'm still going what? Nowhere. Now here's the reality. For many of us, this is what we do, is we work really, really hard in our relationship with God. But because of positioning, because is this made for a piano bench? No, it's the wrong what? Positioning. So no matter how much effort I get, it still doesn't fulfill its purpose. And so that's the problem with trying to love God with all of our effort, is if we're not connected in the right place, we still don't find fulfillment. We still don't find meaning. We still don't have the connection with God that God desires for us to have with him. I could take the boogie board and I could take it to a pool, right? And I could get out in the pool and I could swim around it in the pool, but is it still meeting its purpose? No, because a pool is made, a floaty is made for a pool, not a boogie board. So it's still the wrong positioning. It's still the wrong positioning. A boogie board is made for what? The beach. It's made for the ocean. It's made for the ocean. And so what happens is when I take this and I put it in a place that it is designed for, and I get out on the wave, and I begin to move forward, and now all of a sudden the power of the wave is what pushes me, right? It's the power of the wave that pushes me. I don't push myself in the water. The wave is what pushes me. So the power and the force of what's moving me forward is the wave. So that's important for us to understand, because that's what I mean by positioning, is I'm putting myself in a position where God is at work, where God is moving, where God is. And so as we look at that, then that's what allows us to be able to have that connection with him, the one that he desires for us to have, the one that ultimately we desire to have with him as well. I love what it says in Ephesians chapter 1, verses 19 and 20. It says, I also pray that you will understand the incredible greatness of God's power for us who believe in him. This is the same mighty power that raised Christ from the dead and seated him in the place of honor at God's right hand in the heavenly realms. That where it says this same mighty power in the passage before, this same mighty power, you know, that's that same Greek word, ischus. So basically, that same mighty power is available to us in building in our relationship with him. Again, it's not a power that is based on us. It's a power that's connected in our relationship with him. And so what Jesus does And this is why it's so important for us to make a commitment to continue to read Scripture, so that we can begin to understand and be able to see things and understand, like, oh, so this is what it really means. This is what it looks like. Because Jesus gives us an incredible hint when it comes to positioning. Because here's what Jesus said. He says in John chapter 14, verse 10, don't you believe that I am in the Father? That's what? Positioning. And the Father is where? Positioning. The words I speak are not my own. Positioning. But my Father who lives in me, positioning, does the work through me. It's all about positioning. So the goal that we want to do is we want to look at how do we continue to connect ourselves. And as a matter of fact, one of the greatest struggles that the religious people had during Jesus' time that led them to want to put Jesus to death is because Jesus kept saying things like, I and the Father are one. I am in the Father and the Father is in me. And in doing so, what he's doing is he's positioning himself to show the intimacy and the connection that he has with his Father. And so they couldn't handle the position because that's what he was claiming. And the beauty of this is now what Jesus does is Jesus invites us to begin to experience that position as well, where he is alive in us. And we are alive in him. It's positioning. And the beauty of that is when we begin to understand this, it changes the way that we live our lives. It even changes the dynamic of the way that we look at faith. Because I'll tell you, there's two mentalities that we can have when it comes to following Jesus. There's two. And there's a passage that really talks about it really well. In Romans chapter 8, verses 15 through 17, it says, so you have not received the spirit that makes you fearful slaves. Instead, you received God's Spirit when he adopted you as his own children. Now we call him Abba Father. Abba Father. Which is like, Abba Father is like dad. Faith calls me Dada. It's kind of like the same idea. Abba Father. For his Spirit joins with our spirit to affirm that we are God's children. And since we are his children, we are his heirs. In fact, together with Christ, we are heirs of God's glory. But if we are to share his glory, we must also share in his suffering. So the two examples that this passage gives and the way that we can decide to follow God. One is as a slave, the other is as a child. One is as a slave and the other is as a child. And it's important for us to be able to know the difference. For example, with identity, when it comes to the slave, the identity of the slave is driven by fear, is driven by duty, is driven by obligation, compared to the identity of the child is driven by connection. It's driven by relationship. It's driven by that intimacy with him. What about access? When it comes to the slave only has access as long as the slave is performing. But once the slave refuses to do what the slave is meant to do, then what happens is there could be punishment, there could be discipline, there could also be the owner might sell the slave, like the slave is no longer of value or meaning to the owner. So there's also always this fear from the slave as well. But compared to the child, when it comes to access, like, that's my dad. That's my dad. So I don't have to worry about, obligation. I don't have to worry about, that I can just go to my dad. There's no reason for me to have fear in Hebrews chapter 4. And it's not, the passage's not up there, Jess, so don't worry about putting it up there. But in Hebrews chapter 4, it tells us that we can approach the throne of grace with confidence. Why? Because of positioning. Because of our connection with God. Because we are his child. And I want my kids to know, no matter what struggles they have, no matter how difficult it might be, no matter the disappointments they have, no matter even if they disappoint me, I want my kids to always know that they can come to me. Always. Always know that the door is always open. They always have access to me. Why? Because I'm their dad. Also, when we look at the slave, there's another issue, And that's when it talks about motivation. Like the slave's motivation, again, is out of obligation. And that obligation, again, is driven by fear. But when it comes to a child, when it comes to motivation, I'm loved by my dad. I'm loved by my dad. I remember when I was a kid once, I walked into the house and my stepdad was in bed. And I kind of walked by his room and he said, "Did you pick up that crap outside?" Except he didn't use the word crap. He used another vernacular. And I had had a bad day at school. I turned to my dad and said, "What crap?" But I didn't say that. I said the other. And then it hit me like, oh my goodness. So then I went outside. I started cleaning up everything. It never been that clean before. And then I walked back inside, and my stepfather said, "I heard what you said. I heard what you said." And I thought this was when he's going to lay down the smackdown. Because, he just gave me a hug. Give me a hug. So I think sometimes that fear that we have and coming to God and that motivation is driven by fear, but no, we're even when we're obedient, we're obedient because of gratitude. We're obedient because of love. We're obedient because we have our security in Him. See, the problem with the slave is the slave always has to prove himself or herself worthy. And with the and haven't we done this too? I've seen people that will even teach this, and you're probably familiar with it. That if you have not lived a life worthy of God, then you'll be kicked out. Right? We had communion on Friday night for our worship night, and I was just talking about when I was a kid. I remember the preacher standing up and saying, "If you have not lived a life worthy of Jesus this week, if there is sin in your lives, then you must not take communion." That's all about what? Me. Performance. It's all about effort. And we teach that. And sometimes what we teach to others in the name of following Jesus, what we're really teaching is slavery as opposed to adoption. That I am my beloved's and my beloved's is mine, and I am His. And Jesus says that whenever you take communion, do this in remembrance of me, talking about Him, not remembrance of you and your failure. Because the whole point of communion is we're all failures. We're all failures. Which was really interesting because, when I was a kid, I would look at some of the people taking communion and I'd know how they lived that way. And I was like, like he shouldn't be taking it. I saw him at the liquor store. Like it was just those things. So it's important for us to really begin to think about those kind of elements. Like what do we, when it comes to the slave and the difference between the slave and the child is security. The slave is built on insecurity, isn't it? And there's always, you never know what it is that you're going to walk into. You never know when you're going to be cut off. You never know when you're going to be shut out. You never know when the person you're going to is going to say enough is enough. You never know when you're going to be fired by the master. You never know. But as a child, I'm always His. And again, no matter how much I blow it, I'm always His. Which, as a result of that, then motivates me not to blow it. Because I'm His. And when I do blow it, I go to Him and I say, look, I blew it. So help me be able to learn in my connection, my relationship with you, be able to see changes happen in my life so that I begin to see progress happen. But I come back to Him. I don't know about you, but there was a point in my life where if I messed up, I didn't feel worthy to go before God. I didn't feel like I could pray. I wouldn't even turn on worship music because I felt so ashamed of myself and what I'd done. And then later I realized, just through the study of Scripture, I began to realize that that's never the way God intended for it to be. He never intended for me to live my life by shame. And as I was thinking about that this morning, I've decided I'm gonna do a series in the future called Faith Killers. And I want to do that. I want to look at what are the things that we wrestle with sometimes that kill our faith, and shame is definitely one of them. But as we look at this, it's important for us to begin to understand that. So with that, here's what you can see on the screen about strength. Strength driven by effort is slavery and religion. But strength rooted in position is relational freedom and intimacy. Now, here's the thing that's really important for us to understand. Effort and positioning do look the same. They do look the same. But we have been given a gift by God, and I've talked about that in a previous sermon over the course of this series, but we have been given a gift by God that if we utilize it, we can begin to change the how behind the what. Or more importantly, I guess the gift that we've been given is this question: why? Why? Because they do. Effort and positioning look the same. It's all about motivation. It's all about why. Luke chapter 5, verse 16 tells us this. It says, Jesus often withdrew to the wilderness for prayer. You think he withdrew out of obligation? You think he withdrew because I have to do this? You think he withdrew because I'm supposed to? Do you think he withdrew because it was some transactional relationship that he has with his father? No. He withdrew because, Dad, I want to be with you. I want to touch base with you. I want to talk about life with you. See, it looks the same, right? But it's the why. It's the why. Here's another one. In Psalm chapter 119, verses 25 to 29, I lie in the dust. Revive me by your word. I told you my plans, and you answered. Now teach me your decrees. Help me understand the meaning of your commandments, and I will meditate on your wonderful deeds. I weep with sorrow. Encourage me by your word. Keep me from lying to myself. Give me the privilege of knowing your instructions. Does that sound like obligation? Does that sound like obligation? Does it sound like have to? Or does it sound like, God, your word's in my life. So I want to spend time with you in your word. Because that's where I find life. That's where I find meaning. That's where I find you. And I know that you're going to speak to me through your word. So I pursue you. Acts chapter 2, verse 46. They worshiped together at the temple each day, met in homes for the Lord's Supper, and shared their meals with great joy and generosity. Great joy and generosity. Does that sound like obligation? We're getting together because we have to? No, it's, hey, I'm getting together with people that are pursuing him because our lives are enriched together. We're connected with, we see God working together. We see God moving together. We're coming together because this is a place, again, where we expect God to speak, God to move, God to breathe, God to be. So again, even going to church and connecting with people that way is different. In Matthew chapter 5, verses 15 and 16, no one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see so that everyone will praise your heavenly Father. Again, is that about obligation? Do I serve out of obligation? No, I serve because, you know what, I am moved by the heart of Jesus to love others. And when they see the heart of Jesus in me to love them, then hopefully it has drawn them to him and they begin to worship him. And their lives are open to him as a result of it. So effort and positioning look the same. So we always have to ask ourselves why. Why am I spending time in Scripture? Why am I going to church? Why am I loving God? Why? Because it's also very easy, if we're not careful, for position to slip into effort. To slip into effort. So we want to make sure that we are saying, you know what, God, I just want to hang out with you. I just want to spend time with you. Even if that means like I'm scheduling a time, I'm still scheduling time because I just want to hang out with you. I want to connect with you and who you are and love who you are. And you know what's really interesting is have there ever been times where uh, let's say coming to church, you wake up in the morning and you're like, dude, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. But there's something in your heart reminds you, but you know, church is a place where I'm encouraged and uplifted. And people smile at me. And I get free coffee. And you get up and you come anyway. And then God speaks to you that day. That's the beauty of it. That's the power of it. And so here's what I want to encourage you to do. So what if we move to a point where everything we did was about positioning? I pray because God, I want to hang out with you. I spend time in his word because I want to hang out with you. That's what it means by loving God with all of your strength. Is it means positioning. I put myself in a position now where God is able to fill me and God is able to move in me. And it is his power at work in me by simply me being in a position for him to be able to move. And now I want to begin to encourage you to expand it. What if we begin to utilize every opportunity in our lives as a chance to be positioned and connected with God? What if you did that with work? What if you did it with work? Like, God, I'm going to work today. And I pray that you would help me to see you at work as I'm doing my job. Would that change the way that we work? Would that change the way that we hang out with our family? Would it change the way that whatever it is that we do? Would it change the way that we drive? Some of us need Jesus in the car, right? Would it change the way? So how much would it begin to change our lives if we begin to look at every aspect of our lives as an opportunity to position, connect ourselves with him in every aspect of who we are, in every aspect of our lives? So we love God by seeking to open ourselves to him and just be where he is. That's about positioning. So again, here at Encounter, our core value is driven by the great commandment, which is love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So here at Encounter, we say love up, love out, love in. And what we do is we end every message by looking at those three elements and how we can pull them from the sermon. You can utilize one or more. It's completely up to you. But in loving up, here's what my encouragement is today. Commit to connection, which is position, over perfection, which is effort. Commit to connection, which is position, over perfection, which is effort. Love out. Be an example of a true Jesus follower. People need to see those who are loving God positionally, not loving God by effort, and be able to see the difference. Because I can tell you now, one key difference is joy. It's joy. I love serving him. And then love in, relax in confidence, in the confidence, security, and grace of God. Because positionally, I'm in him. Jesus, thank you